Lila had always preferred to stay in the background. Being in a wheelchair since childhood had taught her to navigate life quietly, to make herself as small and unobtrusive as possible, because people often didn't know how to treat someone like her. Pity and awkward glances were more common than kindness. So when her friends insisted she go on a blind date, claiming it was just for fun, she hesitated. "It's harmless," they promised, "and maybe you'll have a little adventure." Lila wasn't so sure. She didn't do adventures. She did survival, she did routines, and she did caution. But curiosity won, or perhaps it was the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, someone could see her for who she really was. She arrived at the cafe, a cozy downtown spot where soft golden lights spilled onto polished wooden tables, and the scent of fresh pastries mixed with the faint aroma of roasted coffee beans. The place hummed with quiet conversations, the occasional clatter of cups, and laughter that felt just out of reach. Her heart thumped nervously. She had been on blind dates before, but none had ended well. Most people couldn't see past her wheelchair, and the thought of enduring another awkward evening made her stomach twist. Her friends had chosen the location carefully, hiding nearby so they could observe the prank unfold. Lila rolled through the entrance, her hands steadying her chair, though her pulse raced. And then she saw him. At a corner table, a man sat reading a tablet, calm and composed. He looked nothing like the casual guy she expected. There was an effortless elegance in the way he carried himself, a quiet strength in his posture, and a warmth in his presence that made Lila pause. For a moment, she wondered if she had taken a wrong turn, if this was somehow a mistake. "Lila?" The voice was deep but gentle, carrying a calm certainty. She looked up and met his eyes. They weren't filled with judgment or surprise, they were steady, kind, and attentive, the kind of gaze that made you feel noticed in the best possible way. Her friends, peeking from behind a nearby column, exchanged worried whispers. "That's him," one said, her voice barely audible. "What have we done?" Lila approached, trying to mask her nerves with a polite smile. The man stood immediately, not awkwardly, but with an instinctive, careful grace, and gestured toward the space at the table. "It's so good to meet you," he said, and there was nothing condescending in his tone. She felt a small warmth rise in her chest, a relief that she hadn't anticipated. For once, she felt like she wasn't being pitted. They began to talk, and surprisingly, the conversation flowed easily. He asked about her hobbies, her passions, and even about the frustrations she faced in daily life. Lila spoke carefully at first, then more openly, and with each word, she felt the walls she had built around herself start to loosen. He listened with genuine interest, never interrupting, nodding thoughtfully, his attention unwavering. Lila laughed softly, the sound genuine and unguarded, a sound she hadn't made in months. The date, even as a prank, was starting to feel like something real, something meaningful. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, not for her wheelchair, not for her limitations, but for who she truly was. The conversation between Lila and the man continued to flow effortlessly, as if the world outside the cafe had melted away. He asked about her love for painting, and her voice softened with enthusiasm as she described the way colors allowed her to escape, how each brushstroke was a tiny rebellion against the limitations she had grown used to. She spoke of late nights spent in her small studio, of canvases stacked along the walls, some unfinished, some boldly expressive, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel embarrassed to share her passion. He leaned in slightly, listening with an intensity that was both comforting and disarming. "That sounds incredible," he said, eyes bright with genuine admiration. "You're sharing pieces of yourself that most people never even get to see." Lila blinked, a flush rising to her cheeks. She wasn't used to anyone caring so much, and certainly not with such sincerity. Most people's interest was fleeting, polite, or patronizing, but his attention was steady, real. She found herself relaxing, even laughing at a story she had rehearsed countless times in her head but never told anyone aloud. When she mentioned an upcoming gallery show she had been too nervous to attend, fearing that her work wouldn't be taken seriously, his reaction was immediate. "Then we are going," he said simply, as if the decision was obvious. "You should not miss it." Lila shook her head, caught between gratitude and embarrassment at the idea of someone doing something so considerate, so thoughtful. But he smiled gently, patient and reassuring. "I insist," he added, his voice warm. "Not out of obligation or politeness. Because you deserve it." Lila noticed small gestures throughout the evening that spoke volumes. When dessert arrived, he had already asked the staff to adjust the table so her wheelchair fit comfortably. A small bouquet of flowers rested nearby, subtle but beautiful, chosen not for show but to make her feel appreciated. These details, these tiny acts of consideration, touched her in ways words could not. In that moment, she realized that for the first time in a long while, someone had looked past her wheelchair and seen her whole self, and it made her heart ache with a mix of surprise and gratitude. The cafe buzzed around them, but in their corner, there was a calm, a quiet intimacy. Lila spoke about her childhood, the moments she had been underestimated, the sting of exclusion, the nights she cried alone wishing she could be normal. He nodded, never interrupting, reaching out occasionally to brush a loose strand of hair from her face. His presence was reassuring, steady, and entirely free of judgment. She found herself opening up more than she had in years, sharing her dreams, her frustrations, and her hopes for the future. By the time the evening was drawing to a close, Lila realized something remarkable. She had laughed more, shared more, and felt more alive than she had in months. And yet, underneath the joy, a small knot of worry formed in her stomach. What would happen when the truth came out? Would he feel betrayed, or would the kindness he had shown her vanish the moment he learned that this date had begun as a prank? The thought made her chest tighten, but she couldn't deny the warmth that lingered in her heart, a warmth that, for now, she allowed herself to hold onto. The truth arrived softly, almost hesitantly, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Lila's friends, unable to contain their nervous laughter and guilty glances any longer, approached the table just as she was gathering her courage to leave. "We have to tell you," one whispered, cheeks flushed and eyes darting nervously. This date was a prank." Lila's stomach lurched. Her pulse quickened, and for a moment, she couldn't breathe. The kind, attentive man sitting across from her, the one who had made her feel seen and valued, had been set up to be part of a joke. How could she face him now? Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. You knew?" she asked, hope and fear warring in her chest. He leaned back slightly, his expression calm but kind, and a soft smile played at the corners of his lips. "I had my suspicions," he admitted gently. "But even if I hadn't, it wouldn't change anything." Lila blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "What do you mean?" she whispered, barely daring to hope. "I mean that the circumstances of how we met don't matter," he said, his voice steady and warm. "What matters is the person sitting across from me right now. And that person," he added, his eyes meeting hers with unwavering sincerity, "is remarkable." The weight of his words settled over her like a comforting blanket. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes as she realized that someone truly saw her, not as a subject of pity, not as a punchline in a joke, but as Lila, thoughtful, creative, brave, and entirely herself. Her friends, watching from a short distance, couldn't hide their own astonishment. Some wiped their eyes, realizing the depth of the moment they had inadvertently set in motion. The man, sensing Lila's quiet turmoil, reached across the table, gently taking her hand. His touch was reassuring, grounding, and filled with unspoken promises of respect and care. "I'm glad you came tonight," he said softly. "Not because of anything else, but because I got to know you." When it was time to leave, he didn't rush or gesture awkwardly. Instead, he guided her carefully, ensuring her path was smooth and clear, offering a presence that was both protective and unobtrusive. Outside, the city lights twinkled like tiny stars, and the crisp evening air carried a sense of possibility. Lila realized that kindness, sincerity, and genuine attention could turn even a prank into something transformative, something that reached into the heart and left it fuller, lighter, brimming with hope. For the first time in her life, Lila felt entirely seen. Not for the wheelchair she relied on, not for the limitations others had defined for her, but for her true self, her thoughts, her passions, her laughter, and even her fears. She realized that life could surprise her in ways she hadn't dared imagine, that human connection could arrive when least expected, and that someone could make her feel beautiful, respected, and cherished simply by being sincere and attentive. As they walked together under the soft glow of the streetlights, Lila's heart felt lighter than it had in years. The evening had begun with a setup meant for humor, but it had ended with the profound, quiet miracle of someone seeing her, really seeing her, and valuing her entirely. In that moment, she understood that the right person didn't just accept her, he celebrated her, and that realization brought tears of gratitude and wonder streaming down her cheeks.